Thank you for joining us today at Miniature Wargaming Labs. Today we will be building the new Fortress Dropship designed and manufactured by Ironwind Metals. And this is going to be combining two materials. We have metal bits hooked to this two-part resin. And we're going to go over how to make sure these bits are clean, they'll attach nice and neat, and little green stuff in there to fill some of the gaps. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. And one of my recent purchases from Etten Games, which is my friendly local game store here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, was the MS-007 Fortress Dropship by Ironwind Metals for the Battletech game. And so I knew the model was going to be resin and metal. So you get two bags of all the little metal bits here. The resin, I didn't expect. This is the kind of resin I use when I make stuff in my garage. So you can tell it's two-part. Got a little rough here, but that's on the inside. You're not going to see it. And this seems to only want to fit together one certain way. There we go. It's got a little tension on the shell. But you can see there's a slight gap here. So I've got to decide what I want to do with that. And that's because of how it came out of the mold until they poured it in through the top here. So one of the things we'll have to do is clean up this little edge right here. And right here, and then straighten some of these bits right here to carefully shear that down with my X-Acto blade. So the first thing I do when you start doing one of these models is the directions. Actually have all the pieces laid out. So before you start hacking and putting it all together, actually lay out the pieces, make sure you have everything. And then see how much work you're going to have to put into cleaning this up. So it looks like these will be all the landing gears and the hatches. So I assume, and that's why I work with a tray, because a lot of loose metal bits there. So we got our missile pods. I don't know if that hatch was supposed to be in there. The hatch seems different from the others. Alright, we'll see where that goes. Alright, so turret emplacements, small turrets. Alright, so that's all the weapon systems. This is the landing gear. Alright, so let's look at how well. Alright. So we're going to have to do a little bit of cleaning. So you can see that's where the metal was injected into the mold. So I'll have to clean off those sprues, otherwise it won't fit. But the mold was probably actually pretty fresh. Mold lines aren't too bad. The mold's not offset. But I just have to clean this line going around. And that's why, again, I have a tray to collect all the little dust that comes off of it. The panels probably won't really need any cleaning. They do feel like they need a wash. And yeah, I'll have to clip off the turrets and clean some of that up there. That shouldn't be too bad. Alright, so let's get our X-Acto knife and let's start working on the clamshell. Because I have a feeling that for this I might use some Gorilla Glue, and that takes a while to clean. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go around. And you can see these little raised edges. So we're going to bring that down to the lower level here. So let's just get rid of these unnecessary raises. Because if we can flatten that out and flatten these rough edges right here, we'll get a nice smooth fit. There won't be any light peeking through. Probably wouldn't have to do that. When you put it together, prime it, there's no light source inside, so you probably won't notice the gaps, but I would feel that they were there. So let's clean this up and glue it together. Alright, so I finished cleaning up the edge around here, and I fitted it, and it's not perfectly flush with each other. But what I found is these two prongs were actually a touch too long, so a lot of the gap between the two halves could be eliminated by just trimming the little inset prongs down a little bit. And then it gets sit in there more tightly. So let's do a dry fit. So you can see I've got a gap right there, but what I can do is I can squeeze it. And a lot of that disappears. So that actually seems to hold pretty well. I think when it came out of molding, this gap was just too deep. I don't want to trim this down. You don't want to play this game of constantly trimming down a circular object, because then you'll end up with no model left. So, got it where we want it. Alright, so let's do some gluing. Now for this one, I am going to use a touch of Gorilla Glue. And just in the inserts, not too much, because it'll take up space in the insert and prevent it from closing all the way. Now that'll take a while to seal. I don't want to sit here for 18 hours trying to hold that down. So I'm going to use some of my regular super glue, and I'm going to do around the edge. Alright, so it froze up a little bit. So let me unclog that. Alright. There we go. Alright, so I've got my super glue unclogged finally. And we're going to put enough around the lip of this thing. Okay. Take these. Let's join them up. Now, before anything sets, let's run around one more time. Alright, so now I'm going to use a lot of hand pressure, hold that down, get my super glue out of the way, and I'm going to use my Insta-Set. I'm going to spray that both ends. And what that will do is lock the model into place so that the Gorilla Glue has time to do its job. There. Excellent. I might putty that one in and that one with some green stuff. We'll cover that later. Alright, so the next step would be to get to work on these landing gears. So what we're going to do we're going to use our clippers here. They're not actually on that much. Okay, so you can see, probably actually just take them off by hand if you wanted. So once we got all those little spare bits taken out, I am going to use my file here, and we're going to clean up that mold line. And we'll just follow it all the way around the model. And once we get those cleaned up, we'll want to work on these side hatches. And these are pretty clean already. Not seeing a ton of mold lines there. Just walk around through them all anyway. Alright, so let's get those cleaned up and then we'll start gluing it on. Now I've finished cleaning up the landing thrusters and the little skirts that contain them in the pod when it's landing. So something should point out, you'll see this in the instructions, but for these various skirts, they run them, you can't get them mixed up because the ones you want to use for the landing struts run vertically, the other ones run horizontally. Alright, so now we're going to start fixing them to here. So we'll do a dry test, see how much wiggle there is, because we want to make sure that it sits flat. So we want to make sure that all these are pointing at the same angle there. And something else before we fix it, I want to dry test where these are going to be. So we know that when it's attached, it'll look like a T. And so now's a good time to just play around with like how it seems to want to fit. And it seems that there's a little notch right here in the landing strut, and you take the top part of that, and it looks like that will just rest in there when we're done. Alright, so what we're going to do is go back to our super glue. And we'll begin attaching all these. I put a liberal dose of super glue in there. And I'll let gravity do my job here. Alright, so we'll go around, attach these all, and come right back. Now all the landing gears are on. So you can see we got our thrusters here, I guess some other thrusters, and I made sure to clean them, and the reason for that is so that I could set it on the table and we can shake it, there's no wobble. So now, since I cleaned these up and we did a fit to determine how they should sit in their little slot there, which isn't actually that good of a slot, we're ready to go around and start attaching the skirts here. Alright, so we did a final dry fit. I'll make sure to put on a substantial amount of glue. Just looking that this is a resin case, and some of these potential fracture points, do not drop this model. Alright. So I'm looking at the picture. To my right, I've got this affixed. Here's what I'm going to do. My super glue accelerant. Let's make sure I've got it where I want it. This is where having a third arm and hand would have been helpful. Okay, I think that's how we're going to do it. Lay it down, pinch the two pieces together. Okay, then we'll take our accelerant and give that a second there. Alright, excellent. And I'm going to take this picture and compare them. Huh, looks like I did that right. Alright, so let's go around and start attaching the rest of these skirts. Alright, so we have the landing gear and hatches on. Spin it around. It looks like I did a pretty good job of keeping everything even. Now let's start working on the side hatches. Now these are where our mechs will deploy from. And what you'll notice is one of these hatches is not quite like the others, so it's bigger. However, all these slots, so you either have ones with holes or you get two without holes. And those seem to be for the turrets, so I have no idea where the big one actually goes. Actually, here. Alright, so when you've got the big hatch there, you'll notice all the other small hatches. See, this is a big smooth flat space. This has just the little indent. So that tells me this one goes here, and this one goes here. Now something I want to point out is that the metal has this horizontal piece that's supposed to fit in there, but you can see when it was molded, it's a little sloppy in there. So when you press this on, it's going to rock in place. So that tells me I'm going to have to trim this metal piece off. Now if I was a super awesome modeler, you could actually probably rig something up where you could hollow this out and like leave this down and have mechs come out. But I'm not going to do that. Just going to glue that in place. And once again, this metal bit's too big. It's rocking in there. So I've cleaned this piece up already. So we'll start with that one. And there's actually not that many mold lines around it. And when it's put in the inset, you're really not going to see it. But what we're going to have to do is trim this down a little bit. Not all the way, just enough. So it actually sits down flush in its inset. So we've clipped it. Let's see how it fits. Yeah, it's still rocking in there. They did not make that deep enough. So I'm just going to leave the barest of hints of this metal prong here. Let's see if that works. Wrong one. See if that works now. I think it's more of the angle that they designed it at. So let's just get rid of it. This is why we dry fit before we put glue on. That's more like it. Slides right in there. Okay, in that case, put a liberal amount of super glue in here. Fit this right in there. And we want to, while it's still wet and tacky, just try to center it in there. Alright, excellent. Now we'll go around and we'll attach the rest of these hatches. Now we have all the elements of the landing and hatches settled out, so pretty good on that. Now it's time to talk about the weapon systems. So we have the missile pods here, and that's pretty clear where those go. And we have big turrets and little turrets. So, what we're going to start to do is start clipping these off and cleaning them. So, this is pretty simple, just a simple snip off. The mold lines aren't bad, so just a little quick brush to smooth that edge out. And since this is one of, I don't know, that's pretty big. The turret fits in there. Okay. I gotta sort out which ones the small turrets go to, and which ones the big turrets go to. This actually looks like that has a hole for these, which looks like a little gun system that I can fit in there. Okay. So what we're gonna go do is start clipping these off, lining them up, and start gluing them in. And it looks like some of these prongs are deep enough. Alright. I have all my turrets clipped off, and I'm now ready to start gluing them on. So when I look around this model, notice there's big indents and little indents. So based on these instructions, I'm going to assume the little turrets go in the little holes and the big turrets go in the big ones. Just a guess. And these little cutouts are for the missile pods. Now, something I want to point out is on some of these, the way the mold worked, you can actually see there's some deformations in these. So we'll either have to cut these out or trim the metal bits off the back of the turrets. Either one. But some of these coming out too shallow or with deformations in them that the turret's not going to fit in there properly. Alright, let's start gluing. So I'm going to take one of my turrets. There actually is a mold line when I was cleaning them off that runs just partway up. So that's where the two different parts of the mold met. Oh, mother. Well, I have to re-glue that. Alright. See, you can see that's rocking in there. And I forgot the dry fit. That's why we don't forget the dry fit. So let me just give it a little tighter fit. Alright. To make life a little easier. There we go. So now here's a special turret right here. You can see like the little compartment appears to have opened. And one of the bits you get is this little tiny one. So I think that's supposed to fit in there to make it look like the turret's opened up and is about to shoot something. So we'll go ahead and dry fit this first. Okay, that one fits properly. That actually seems too shallow. It's too big. Alright. Alright, we're going to let that sit for a second. So let's try one of the little ones. I'm going to have to trim that. So some of these are too big, some are too small. Use these clippers to get them just right. Okay. Now, when you use the accelerant and spray it, and we're still going to be wet. So, if you touch the super glue to that, it'll automatically harden. So let's try something different. Use my Alright, I actually like that. There we go. Excellent. Alright, so I'm going to go around this model and start putting these turrets in. This will be interesting because it looks like there's a turret that's supposed to go there, but there's no indent for it. And all these turrets have little indents, so we'll figure that out. Make sure I'm doing that right. We'll be back. All the turrets are now attached. Hopefully I put them in the right place. Something I'll mention is, it looks like there's these little cutouts that were similar to these ones where the hatches went, but there's no piece that actually goes in there, even though it looks like it was modeled to receive one. So I don't know what that's supposed to be, but that'll be fine. But now that we have everything glued together, you'd think it'd be done. Something I want to do is I want to take care of these little tiny cracks. You don't have to, but I think it'd be a good idea. And there's only two of them I want to do, really. These are the worst ones right here and right here. I can actually line up a certain way and see light on the other side through here. So, to take care of that, I'm going to get some green stuff here. Now to start, I don't need that much, so I'm just going to cut off a little bit. This will actually still be way too much for the job I have intended. But there's actually some other models you can't see on the camera that I need the green stuff up to. So any leftovers will go to them. Here, I'm just going to take that. Got a little bowl of water next to me. I'll let that down. And we'll fold that in half and we'll begin mixing it up. I have my green stuff mixed up here now. So I'm just going to cut off a tiny piece of it. Put that back in the water. So what I want to do is roll this out a little bit. So I'm going to make a little tube with it. I'm going to make it nice and thin. up with the little gap I see. And then I'm going to take these, let's get them a little wet so the green stuff doesn't stick to it. And take a nice smooth motion and push it in. I have modeling tools, but you at home might not have them, but you might have some tweezers. And there we go. Now let's take care of that big one right there. And again, trick is controlling what the green stuff wants to stick to. Trying to get it to fit behind these teeth. If there's too much, just pull it off. It's a bigger gap than I thought. Need a little bit more. That's the idea. So I'll keep going around plugging the holes until I'm satisfied. Probably for you at home, not something you have to do. But here is our Fortress Dropship. A little finagly to put together because you're mixing resin and metal. But it actually can slot together pretty well. Just make sure to clean everything up. Well, thank you for joining us at Miniature Wargaming Labs, and we'll see you next time.